Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Planet X, the reason behind GMO crops. Now, in Article 5A3 entitled Alien Floating Cities Built on the Planet X planets before they exploded, I showed that the buildings which are appearing in the sky all over the world, and most often over China, could not have been built with Earth materials and must have been built on a planet before it broke up and became a dead planet. In other words, a dead core, which I usually refer to as a stellar core, surrounded by a debris field made of the pieces which had been the outer layers of the planet. This is what the evidence, starting with the observation of spherical objects in the sun's corona, which provoked it into having CMEs, has led to. These are low gravitational energy objects, and so is the debris. Low gravitational energy objects have a low gravitational potential for their apparent density, and thus remain suspended in the Earth's atmosphere. Observation of these objects in the sun's corona led me to the understanding that these pieces of rock should be coming into our atmosphere. The observational evidence showing that it was happening came later. And here is some of that observational evidence. And what we see here is dark shapes and jagged edges, which are amongst these iridescent clouds, and they look like mountaintops. Looks just like mountaintops, just underneath the cloud. Obviously solid objects. So they look like mountaintops, but there is no mountain connecting these rocks to the Earth. So they cannot be parts of a mountain. They are pieces of rock suspended in the atmosphere. Now, where do these rocks come from? They cannot be Earth rocks because Earth rocks would fall to the ground. These have to be rocks that come from the broken planets, which are part of the Planet X system or the destroyer system, as these objects are absorbers of energy and thus destructive, and have, over the last few thousand years, progressively weakened the sun and the Earth to the point that the sun is no longer shining and the Earth is close to completely losing its atmosphere. You may look at Article 5A2 for more details on that. And here you see a huge rock which appears amongst the clouds in Peru. And this piece of rock is long and flat and obviously large enough to have had many buildings upon it, had it been a part of the planet to which it once belonged that had buildings on it. The cities seen in the sky do not seem to be built on thick pieces of rock, and the fact that this is a long flat piece suggests that the surface of these planets may have broken into pieces of rock that were long and flat. But if it is surprising to see rocks floating in our atmosphere, why does no one ever mention the fact that clouds in the Earth's atmosphere, which are made of tiny droplets of water, cannot be made of earth water? This is because liquid water is denser than air and cannot therefore remain suspended in the atmosphere. The only possible reason why the clouds remain suspended in the atmosphere is that they are made of energy depleted or Planet X water, and they come from space. Why is the truth regarding this not taught in school? Why doesn't anyone teach children in school about the rocks and clouds suspended in the atmosphere which come from space, from planets that broke into pieces long ago? They don't, because this is one of the most closely guarded secrets on this planet. And here is the same city seen over China in 2007. As you can see, it's been photographed from different angles. So here the observer is almost underneath the city, and here the observer is in the distance, more further away from the city. So the angle is quite different, but yet it's the same city. It appeared on the same day, so it has to be the same city. And you can even tell some of the photographs, this pattern here is seen there as well, the two buildings. So now, if you find an article talking about these cities in the sky, they will usually refer to them as mirages. But mirages are not real. They are due to the human brain trying to process distant images that are not clear. Mirages cannot be perceived the same way once photographed, and they can even less be seen to be the same object when photographed from different angles. So it is illogical to call these pieces of rock with buildings on them mirages, and yet people persist. Why? Because the powers that be do not want people to know the truth about Planet X and what it really is. So if it is obvious that this is what is happening, from the insistence that these are mirages and the fact that anything but the truth is taught about water and rocks floating in our skies, why would anyone think that the powers that be would use holographic projections of these cities and thus confirm the truth about Planet X? Isn't that completely illogical? Furthermore, people had to have observed these centuries ago because they appear in the Jack and the Beanstalk fairy tale, and ancient Chinese painters painted floating rocks in the sky. Who would think that the ancient Chinese were seeing holographic projections of these things thousands of years ago, especially after being presented with photographic evidence of rocks in the sky and being shown that it is impossible for earth water to become suspended in the sky, and that therefore clouds cannot be made of earth water. Only people who do not understand on purpose, only people who have a vested interest in the lies that proliferate on this planet. And here's a picture of a book on Jack and the Beanstalk. And of course, I think these stories were around before 1535. So centuries ago. And these ancient Chinese paintings, Chinese culture is very, very old. These are very, very old paintings, again, also painted centuries ago. And you can see that there were rocks, pieces of rock floating in the sky. Looks like pieces of a mountain, but floating. And you can see this rock that obviously does not belong here, that just settled on the ground. It's obvious because it broke some of the trees around it. You can see some fallen trees around it. It doesn't belong on this landscape. It looks totally different. So this looks like a broken piece of planet that settled here. And it was painted. You can see that it disturbed these houses as well. There's part of it that's over this house here. So obviously, Chinese painters, ancient Chinese painters, were seeing these things. They could not have been seeing holographic projections because the technology was not around then, was it? And why would anyone try to fool ancient Chinese painters into thinking that these things were around anyway? It is completely illogical. Now, as I have shown in Article 5A3, alien floating cities built on the Planet X planets before they exploded, the fact that these buildings are in good condition can only mean that the planets suddenly broke into pieces and that therefore the people, animals, and all life forms were alive at the time. So we would expect plant seeds to have been viable at the time, and what will happen if these seeds enter into our atmosphere? Is it possible that they will germinate and grow, but they will most likely be different from Earth seeds, and someone may wonder how crops are suddenly appearing on Earth with a totally alien genetic makeup never before seen on our planet? Some of these plants may even take over and destroy our food crops. If you were the powers that be and didn't want anyone on the surface figuring out what is going on with Planet X, how these broken pieces of planets keep coming into the Earth's atmosphere, what would you do? You would start producing genetically modified or GM food crops and start allowing them to contaminate normal food crops in order to cover up the truth. This is the most likely reason for GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and it shows that they will go to any length to cover up the truth regarding Planet X. And here you see a photograph of this city floating in the sky, and you can see that there's greenery here. It looks like greenery. There's a lot of green, and it looks like foliage. So this suggests that there were seeds on these pieces of broken planet that germinated and grew. And so this is most likely why we would get genetically different plants on our planet, and they're trying to cover that up. So in conclusion, pieces of broken planets are coming into the Earth's atmosphere and have been doing so for thousands of years. Some of these broken pieces of planet have buildings on them. It is therefore likely that plant seeds are coming to our planet and germinating once they fall on the ground. Since these plants are most likely genetically different from plants on Earth, this, which suggests that the use of genetically engineered crops on Earth, which are clearly inferior to natural crops, is due to a desire to cover up the truth about Planet X once again. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.